Here's a way to enrich your study of the Bible. When you're reading stories from the scriptures, notice how often there's interlocking themes between these various stories of God's rescue of his people, so that when you read these stories in tandem, you have a better understanding of how God works to deliver his people. For instance, one of the stories we read today in Bible in the 1 Year from Daniel 3 is the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego who are cast into the fiery furnace. Now, read that story in tandem with the story of Israel's enslavement in Egypt and God's rescue of them from that enslavement. And there's a number of parallel themes. In both cases, you have God's people in exile. In both cases, you have God's people persecuted by Gentile powers. In both cases, you have a furnace, because you have the fiery furnace, but then also Egypt is referred to as a furnace of iron furnace. In both cases, of course, you have God's messenger sent to deliver his people from this oppression. A number of interlocking themes demonstrate that if you read these stories together, you see that within each story is embedded the other story. These are all narratives that teach us about how God acts in order to provide his people with deliverance. And cumulatively, all of these stories of rescue, where God goes into exile to bring his people out, are a preaching beforehand of what God is going to do in Christ, because he rescues Christ from the exile of the grave and death to bring him into life and freedom in order that we might have life and freedom and rescue in him.